Hello, welcome to my Oracle Think Tank deck profile. So this is just a list that I've been playing around with a little recently. I didn't have that much of a chance to play around with it too much because I had to then start practicing for BDSF, and that was the point where I started messing with Regalia basically. So I didn't get too many games, but this is sort of different to other premium lists you may have seen. So it's just something fun to try out, and I had a request anyway to put this up, so let's get into it. So we have the Lozenge Maker Starter, Image Rare, although you can play any style, doesn't really matter. They all do the same thing. Then we've got 4 copies of Susanoo. So this is really cool because it's basically the best grade 3 in Oracle Think Tank to ride into and use this skill, because it doesn't care what grade your opponent's on. It doesn't care if you have a grade 3 in your soul or not. It's going to do stuff. It's going to do some level of pressure, and it's going to plus your hand. So it's really good for that. It's sort of like a pseudo first stride, because while you have Momo as a pressure card, Momo also costs a lot of hand, whereas Susanoo is gaining hand. So a lot of times I'd like to just use Susanoo instead. In fact, we're getting the new Stride, which does similar thing to Susanoo, which I think will be played more than Momo, because Momo is just too risky. If your opponent is prepared, they're going to punish you really badly for it. Susanoo also has the on-ride skill, which lets you look at top 2. So you can prepare your triggers, or you can prepare normal units that you want to join to. But if you see Amaterasu or Ichikishima, just be careful, because you have to reveal the top card. So if you plan to stride, then just know that you can't maintain those 10k powers that you've gained from their skills, because once you stride over your heart, you've got a new unit altogether. So just be mindful of that. And the next bit is the 4 copies of Goddess of the Sun Amaterasu. So this is really good, because if it's revealed, you can bind the top card of your deck, and then you can give your Vanguard 10k until end turn, and a crit. The thing is, you can use it defensively as well, because there are Gguards. There's one that's currently out, but there's a new one that's going to come out as well as the old Octagonal Magus, which you can play in the Magus deck, that can basically use this card defensively to give your Vanguard 10k during your opponent's turn, which helps you deal with decks like Nightmare Dolls, of course. And also the other skill it has is that when it attacks, you can discard a card from your hand and look at top 3, and then you can add up to 1 normal unit to your hand by revealing it. If you reveal, by the way, on Ichikishima Amaterasu, you can bind the next card as well on your deck, so you can actually filter 2 cards out of your top 3 with this card. But you can also set up as well the Ichikishimas and Amaterasus to then do the Gguard to draw and then reveal top card. That way giving your Vanguard the guaranteed defense, or you can just set up your triggers as well. So you can use this defensively and offensively. This card is like the Parsifal of Oracle Think Tank. It's so good and splashable, and with the new Stride, this card is going to be even more desirable to play. So 4 copies of Divina Kerozuchi. So this is like Susanoo. It triggers from top of your deck. Soul Blast 1, discard 1. Very useful. Soul's quite easy cost, but there are times where you can run dry, especially if you're using this heavily. So just be aware, especially when you go into Ichikishima Stride, because Ichikishima is also Soul Blast and Counterblast to draw 2, which then helps you to trigger the GB3. So be careful that you're not just eating your soul too much before you can use her draw 2 skill. So Kerozuchi, let's just say it's like an extra dry check, but it's not quite as good, because the thing with extra dry checks is that you're threatening your opponent with a Vanguard and a Rearguard swing, because you then pass the triggers from them guarding to your Rearguard, whereas this thing makes it so you have to put your trigger onto a unit already beforehand, so then your opponent can just be like, well, I guess the Vanguard doesn't have that crit, so I don't have to bother guarding that one too hard. It's the sort of thing really that you have to like look out for. But it's very good. It works on Vanguard and Rearguard, so as a ride target you're still playing the game. And then you've got 4 copies of Ichikishima. This is only a Rearguard skill. It does the same thing as Amaterasu when revealed from deck. It can bind top card and give Vanguard 10, but it doesn't give the crit, so it's not quite as popular. However, it's a grade 2, so you can use it for the early game when you're calling it. So the calling skill is that when placed on rear, you look at the top card of your deck, you can put it on the top or bottom, and then you reveal the top card of your deck. So you basically filter 2. And if it's a normal unit, you can give your Vanguard 10, you give herself 10k power. However, if you do reveal Ichikishima or Amaterasu, you can then give your Vanguard 10k from their own abilities anyway. So you can kind of strike gold and do even more pressure with it. It's a really fun card for rushing with. So it's really useful, and it's an extra way of also defending against the Nightmare Doll combo. So a very good card. A lot of people don't play it. I would say it's definitely one of the more underrated grade 2s in the game. And speak of underrated grade 2s, we've also got Theo, which is a Vanguard and Rearguard on-play skill. It's CB1 draw, so it gives you a bit of security in the early game if you're worried that your opponent's going to rush you out, and you're trying to look for cards to stop yourself from bricking. So having that is always useful, and plus it's an on place, so it means that if you did randomly draw into something like, say, Amano Murakumo, that makes a massive difference, because then you can place Amano Murakumo after. The thing is that main phase plussing is just better than the battle phase plussing, because you're able to make immediate use of your newly acquired card. And this card is also good in that if your opponent's on grade 3, you can actually set up a grade 3 in your soul to then have an extra drive check for Susanoo. I kind of prefer this over the non-grade specific cards, because the thing is like playing the other choice that we have, like Rubinia for example, or Refluke and so on, is that I feel like I'm playing something that doesn't really do much, that I don't really benefit enough from directly, just so I can do like a high roll Susanoo combo play where I have grade 3 in my soul, because the thing is I'm doing all that for what? Just to get an extra drive check, just so I can plus back. It's not really that worth warping my whole deck around that one play, especially if the return isn't really anything amazing, like you're not really profiting much from it. So that's why I prefer this card for my soul charging, even though it requires my opponent being grade 3 to do soul charge bit. But to do the soul charge bit, you always have to have the normal unit drop zone to do that. So its skill kind of continues on from the draw, where if you have the normal unit in your drop, any normal unit, so if you discarded, guarded, or soul blast or whatever, any point early in the game, if you supposedly ride this, then you are forced to actually put the normal unit on top of your deck. So while you're drawing, you can also end up slowing down finding stuff that you need in the process. So that's always something to be careful with. It's a double-edged sword, because you can use that to your advantage or against you. The advantage, of course, soul charging it if your opponent's on grade 3, because it lets you soul charge the normal unit that you place on top. But if you're not using for that, it's also good for just recycling cards that you want to see again, or even putting stuff like Amaterasu on top and then revealing the Amaterasu to give your Vanguard 10k in a crit. So there's all kinds of plays you can do with this, which is very handy. It's a very toolboxy card in this deck. And then next we have 4 copies of Yachimatahiko. So this thing is actually misprinted. The card does the opposite thing of what it says. So it's used for guard restrict, and obviously if you combine it with Ichikishima, you can get a better guard restrict. It's sort of like Silent Tom, but better, because it can stop protect gift if used the right way. The one thing is that it can't deal with grade 3 heals. Only Popo can, so grade 3 heals can still be used against it. However, if you were to high roll, or if you ride up first into your Susanoo, and then you just gave this the triggers, and then use its skill to stop your opponent using triggers, if they happen to play draw PGs, heal guardians, overtrigger, then you shut off so much guarding potential that you can actually try and just steal games with this card on your grade 3 while your opponent's on grade 2, basically. So it's quite good in that it can speed up your wins, whereas Popo, you have to actually wait. Popo is just a sitting duck until you reach like 10 in your deck, so it does have those problems. And then we play 4 of the best grade 1 in Oracle Think Tank, I think, which is Amano Murakumo. It's a grade 3 searcher, but in my opinion one of the best grade 3 searchers, because the 5k power is always active no matter what, because you just have to reveal, and this deck reveals almost all the time from turn 1 onwards. Even when you're just using his skill, he's inherently triggering himself, which the same can't be said for many grade 3 searchers. So he's very good for that, and also there's a lot of good targets. You've got the grade 3 heals, of course, which helps because this deck wants to draw into heals, so that you can Gguard after you ride your Susanoo to set up Ichikishima. But then there's also searching your Susanoo as your ride target. There's searching Amaterasu, which is not only a good rearguard, but it's also a way to get your Vanguard to have 10k and a crit, which you can use basically from turn 1 onwards. So you can get this on 23k with double crit on your turn 1. That's something you can do. Of course, if you go first, you're kind of a bit hesitant to add Amaterasu to your hand because you're not attacking with that 10k and a crit. But it's really good for this sort of stuff. It's a good rearguard as well because it's usually going to be 30k, so very good. Very nice card. Then we have 2 Divina Muto. So this card can recycle your normal units from your drop zone to the top of your deck. So you're plussing your deck by 1 card. Good when you're decking out as well, because then it makes a difference between being able to drive check or not. It also gains 15k power. So you can do like a big heavy play. Yachimatahiko goes quite nicely with this, but it is counterblast heavy, just to bear in mind. And the thing is, well, you can put like, just like with Theo, you're putting back normal units that you want to see again. And you can also put in stuff like Amaterasu, so you can then just use another reveal card and just get 10k and crit in your Vanguard and bind the top card so that you don't have to drive check into it. And just to go back to Amna Murokuma, this card discards, so you could actually do something like discarding Amaterasu and then just use Muto or Theo to then put the Amaterasu back on top and then reuse Amaterasu again. You can multi-use Amaterasu, and this is from early game, by the way. So Muto is a very cool card. Then we have 3 Komegas. As I mentioned, counterblast heavy when you're using Muto and Yachimatahiko. So one way to get around that is you could play Komegas as well to countercharge. It's on plays countercharge. It reveals top card as well, so that's very good because you're revealing a lot in this deck. So you're always going to be able to countercharge in most situations. Countercharge 2 is a lot. Then we've got 4 copies of Divine Sword Kusanagi. It's a crit trigger, so I'm just playing max crits, but you can play draws if you want to, if you're not too comfortable with Centaur crits. There are situations where you want to have more PGs in the game, so that's understandable. Then we have 1 Overtrigger Armor. So Armor lets you continuously drive check if you drive check it via triggers. Since this deck does do some stacking, you can hit into this a bit more as well, so it's useful for that. In fact, you can even just look and think, oh, I'm getting an Overtrigger, maybe I just do like a front row and just rush my front row and plus a few cards. If you use this with Kerozuchi and Susanoo, you can basically get the 100 million and you draw a card while keeping this card in your hand, so that's just something to note because you're basically able to gain advantages still off of that. And then there's 4 copies of Psychic Bird. So Psychic Bird, it soul charges, it's a mulligan 1 crit basically, it's quite good. So you get to still find stuff while maintaining soul, so it's very handy to play this crit. And then 3 Strides crits. I don't have space for a 4th one, of course, so just 3 copies. If I was playing normal PGs, then I would be playing 4 of this. You don't really stride that much because you're riding Susanoo up, and that's sort of your turn 3 play. So really your striding matters by turn 4 usually. But you can also stride with this if you need grade 3s that badly, which is the heal trigger. So searchable again via grade 3 searcher. If you have to drop this early game, it's not actually too great because you want to ride Susanoo and then Gguard after you play your Susanoo turn. That's the ideal thing to do. And obviously if you guard with them early, that means you're not seeing it again. So then you have to then try and draw into your other remaining copies, which the chances obviously reduce themselves the more you're losing this heal trigger early game. So just try not to be in a situation where you're forced to guard with this. But when the new stride comes out, this won't be an issue anymore because you'll be able to continue using Susanoo's skill while having Generation Break 2. So that will fix the problem there by that point. Then 4 copies of Ichikishima. So you ideally want a G-Guard after your turn 3. And then you have a Counter Blast and Soul Blast available to then do the draw 2 to set up your GB3 play. Then there is 2 copies of Momo. So Momo is a restander. I play a few just in case if I go against Link Joker, which I have yet to do, I think. I don't think I've played this against Link Joker. I'm not sure. But it can hit for like 68, or 58, sorry. So it's pretty good for that reason. But also you can just try and steal games on first stride if you see an opportunity to clinch a victory. Then we've got the Calm Susanoo, the GR. 5k in a crit is good on Generation Break 2. Sometimes you think, okay, well my opponent's hand isn't that great. I can do some real pressure if I just do this or something rather than playing into Ichi. So it's quite good for that. He's also got the other skill where if you're just losing the game by losing so much hand, you can just Counterblast 2 and draw up to 5 cards in your hand. So you can do a little bit of recovery. It's not the best recovery though because you have to actually find something you want to join to actually do a real counterattack. So it's a bit mixed. Then we've got 2 copies of Karma Susanoo, the on-hit one. I play this because it's free. I can use it as a first stride, so if I want to gain Generation Break, then I'll just go into this. There's no Oracle keyword condition on this one, like with Amla Sugumi. The thing is, unlike Tsukiyomi or Battle Sisters, this deck doesn't really have its own first strides that are often worth going into, so you just still play something like an on-hit in this deck. And then you have the 2 Amaterasu G-Guards. It's free, there's no Counterblast cost, and it's 25k shield, and you can basically you can basically set up your triggers with it. You can't use it with the grade 3 Amaterasu and Ichikishima though, because you have to reveal. This card doesn't reveal, so you're really just playing into your 1 of 16 triggers rather than your 24 triggers. But this card can play into your 24 triggers, Barbaros, because it's +1 draw, and then you reveal the next card, and if it's a Amaterasu or Ichikishima, you're just going to bind it and then give your Vanguard 10k defensively to deal with Nightmare Dolls. Oh, by the way, the grade 3 heals, when they're revealed, you can still get 5k shield with this. So now this gets 5k shield more often than before, because basically you need to have grade 1 or greater revealed for your 5k shield to go off. Obviously with heals being grade 3 now, its success rate is much higher than it used to be. And we've got a new Gguard coming out as well, which also reveals the top card of your deck. So if you find yourself in a situation where your pattern, after you're stacking off of Goddess of Sun Amaterasu, finds that you want to have Amaterasu on top of your deck, then you can now use the next Gguard that comes out to do that. So this deck will get better with the new support for Premium Collection. But that is pretty much it for my Susanoo deck profile. So I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you guys around. Goodbye.